Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the gritty, shadowy world of medieval assassins, where you wear a hood not for fashion but because seeing your face could get you killed. Imagine the flicker of torchlight against stone walls, the scent of boiled leather, unwashed bodies, and damp cloaks that never quite dry. You're crouched on a rooftop, dagger pressed to your ribs, waiting for a signal that might never come. Welcome to your first night on the job. Except, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're all tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're 15 years old when they find you. Orphans like you aren't rare. Wars, famines, and the occasional bout of plague make sure of that. You're skinny, fast, and good at slipping between shadows. One day, someone watches you lift a coin pouch from a drunk noble's belt and vanish into an alley before the man even notices. That someone taps your shoulder that night. He smells like ink, candle wax, and wet iron. He doesn't ask your name, just says, "You want to eat and never be owned again?" He's lying, of course, but you say yes. Training is brutal. You're hauled to a compound that smells like boiled onions and sweat. You learn how to scale stone walls with nothing but your fingers and panic. You memorize pressure points, learn how to garrote a man in silence, and spend entire afternoons practicing the art of walking so silently you can hear your heartbeat echo off the cobblestones. The punishment for failure isn't a slap on the wrist. It's sleeping outside without bread, or worse, being used as the dummy during someone else's knife drill. Quirky fact: to build pain tolerance, some groups allegedly had initiates sleep on stinging nettles. All night. Naked. No confirmed survivors from that bonding exercise. You also learn the rules of the game. Rule 1. Never speak your real name again. Rule 2. Never form attachments, love, friendship, or even favorite bread sellers. Everyone becomes a weakness. Rule 3. If captured, don't talk. Not even to beg. Historians still argue whether these rules came from actual organized guilds, like the fabled Hashishin of the Middle East, or whether they were just dark folklore that spread like wildfire thanks to fearful nobles and over-imaginative monks. Some say these groups were disciplined cells of political killers. Others claim it was mostly hype, loner killers with a branding problem. But whether or not your group has a sacred text, a creepy old leader with cloudy eyes, or just a guy named Marcus with a sword and a god complex, your path is the same. You're the sharp end of a weapon no one wants to admit exists. Your first mission comes sooner than expected. A merchant is selling secrets to a rival barony. He's always surrounded by guards, but one of them drinks too much and has a soft spot for dice games. You're told to make the message clear, which means not just killing the merchant, but doing it in a way that warns others without blowing your identity. You spend 3 nights memorizing the guard routine. You hide under a butcher's stall one night just to measure the angle of the windows. You rub pig's blood on your hands so you get used to the stickiness. Your handler says it helps with the panic. Then the night comes. You slide into the merchant's chambers dressed as a chimney sweep. He's asleep, snoring. He has a small dog. The dog sniffs you, sneezes, and waddles off. You're close enough to count his eyelashes. Your hand shakes. You hesitate. Too long. He wakes up. Your first kill isn't clean. It's noisy. There's blood, panic, too much movement, and someone shouts from the corridor. You jump through a window. You dislocate your shoulder. You limp 2 miles before finding the contact point, only to discover they moved it for security reasons. Classic. The merchant dies. You live. Barely. You don't get a thank you. Just dry bread and a cold glance. You're told to move better next time. That night, you vomit 3 times and dream of the man's gurgling final breath. And yet you're still in. There's no quitting. You can't just say, "Hey, I'm not really into murder anymore, maybe I'll be a blacksmith." There are no career shifts in this line of work. Once you've seen the inner workings, the faces, the names, the hiding places, they can't afford to let you go. The only exit interview ends with a knife. So you trudge forward, job after job. You get better, sharper, colder. But deep inside, something breaks every time. And with every breath you take in shadow, you wonder, am I the hunter, or just the next target in line? You learn quickly that being an assassin isn't just about killing people. It's about trust. Or more accurately, the complete and utter lack of it. No one trusts you, you don't trust anyone, and the people above you? They trust you exactly as far as they can throw your limp, disposable body. You're part of something now. A brotherhood, they call it, because murder cult doesn't test as well in recruitment. It sounds noble, even comforting, until you realize everyone's watching everyone else for weakness. Meals are quiet. No one shares stories. No one jokes. And if someone goes missing, you don't ask questions. You just avoid their room because it probably has a new tenant by morning. At first, you think maybe that's just how it is with trained killers. But no, there's something deeper. Paranoia isn't a side effect here, it's a survival tactic. You're told about a man named Olin, once the best in the guild. Could vanish like smoke. Could slit a throat with a rose stem, supposedly. Then one day he fails a mission. Comes back looking pale, panicked. The next morning he's gone. Not punished. Not exiled. Just disappeared. His bunk is cleaned, his name never mentioned again. When you ask about him, quietly, privately, you're told with a smile, you don't want to end up like Olin. Friendly bunch. Historians still argue whether these so-called secret orders actually operated with such strict internal codes, or if medieval chroniclers just exaggerated to spice up their scrolls. After all, scribes were kind of the YouTubers of the 12th century. They knew drama brought eyeballs, or, well, eyeballs to the parchment anyway. Still, something's not right. You start noticing little things. Your knife's been moved. Someone's gone through your gear. That guy with the limp? He used to stammer, now he doesn't. Did he fake it the whole time? Is he watching you? Eventually, you learn the truth. Every assassin watches another assassin. You're all being shadowed, graded, assessed for deviations. Like that time you let the merchant's dog live? That was noted. Compassion equals weakness. Weakness equals replacement. You catch one of them, barely more than a boy, watching you during morning drills. You confront him. He shrugs and says, "Orders." Just that. Orders. Trust no one. The guild's leadership is a blurry haze of faceless voices and ominous edicts. You never see the master. You meet handlers, couriers, sometimes a masked elder who smells like mint and dried blood. The only consistency is the message: do your job, stay invisible, and don't ask what happens upstairs. You begin to realize your organization isn't a circle. It's a ladder. And the people above you? They climb by stepping on necks like yours. Quirky historical tidbit. In some medieval spy rings, suspected traitors were made to drink wine laced with powdered lead, not enough to kill them, but enough to cause constant gut pain and paranoia. A literal taste of betrayal. And still you stay. Because where would you go? Every village knows there's someone out there killing quietly. They all suspect each other. A broken window, a dead priest, a vanished tax collector. They whisper assassin like it's a ghost story. If you're ever caught, even if it's a misunderstanding, your only defense is your own knife. You live in coded phrases. The sparrow nest in the northern wall doesn't mean anything to most people, but to you, it means your drop point moved again and your contact might already be dead. You carry 3 escape routes in your head at all times. You never sleep in the same place twice if you can help it. And you never, ever drink anything someone else hands you. Not even water. Especially not water. It's exhausting. Sometimes you wonder if this is how soldiers feel. But at least soldiers wear colors. Fly banners. Have names. You're a rumor with blood on its hands. You're a shadow someone might remember just long enough to describe to a constable before being silenced forever. One day they assign you a partner. He's older. Wears a scar over his eye and smells like wood smoke. Doesn't talk much, at first. But when he does, it's cryptic things like, never kill anyone on a Thursday. Bad luck, and always trust the rats. They know when the poison's out. His name is Enrique, or so he says. He trains with you, eats beside you, even laughs sometimes. You start to let your guard down. Maybe, just maybe, this is what trust feels like. Then Enrique disappears for a week. When he returns, he won't look you in the eye. That night, someone tries to kill you in your sleep. A thin wire stretched across your tent flap, meant to slice your throat as you turn. You spot it just in time. You don't tell anyone. You don't confront Enrique. You just move your bedroll to a new hiding spot and sharpen your knives in silence. Because now you understand. You don't survive in this life by being the strongest or the fastest. You survive by trusting nothing and no one, especially not them. You start dreaming of doors that don't open and people with no faces. You wake up gasping, knife already in your hand, scanning the dark for enemies that aren't there yet. Because in your world, if they aren't there now, they will be. You're assigned a mission in a port city. Cobblestone alleys, sails flapping in the salty breeze, rats fighting over fish guts. Your target? A Venetian envoy accused of stirring rebellion. Officially, he's here for trade. Unofficially, he's meddling in the local duchy's politics, whispering promises into the wrong ears. Your orders are clear. Eliminate him before he leaves on the morning tide. It sounds simple, almost surgical. But if you've learned anything by now, it's that the simpler the job sounds, the more likely you are to end up impaled on a fishhook. First hurdle: he never goes anywhere alone. His bodyguards are massive, mustached men with curved swords and no sense of humor. They eat in shifts, they check undercarriages, and they actually taste his food first. For real. And unlike that drunk noble back in your early days, this guy sleeps in the center of a locked, guarded tower with only one entrance and a ladder that's pulled up at night. Great. So you improvise. You rent a room across the square. Pretend to be a glassworker's apprentice. You even blow some clumsy-looking baubles to sell at market, because no one suspects a glassblower. You watch. You wait. You learn the guard patterns. You learn the envoy's routine, down to the minute he scratches his nose during breakfast. You find a spot where the tower wall is weakest. Then one humid night, you scale it using a rope soaked in pine resin for grip. Halfway up, a cat yowls below. A dog barks. You freeze. There's no dramatic fight at the top. You slip through the window, cut the envoy's throat, and smear his blood in a pattern you were taught long ago. A crescent and a cross, the mark of your guild. It's meant to send a message. And maybe it does, but not to the people you think. Historians still argue whether assassins truly left ritual marks or symbols, or whether that detail was fabricated by suspicious lords desperate to turn murder into mysticism. The crescent cross might have just been a wine stain one guy misread into legend. Or maybe your guild likes the rumors. Fear works better than facts. The next morning, you're already on a barge heading upriver before the sun kisses the sails. But there's a problem. Your contact never shows at the rendezvous point. You wait. 1 hour. 2. The boatman eyes you with suspicion. Eventually, a boy hands you a note. New drop point. Use caution. Burn this. You do. But something doesn't feel right. The new meeting place is a tavern where no one's smiling. The beer smells off. The innkeeper's wife watches you too long. You hear the word rat in a whispered sentence that cuts off when you enter the room. You leave before your drink arrives. Later that night, 2 men follow you. They're not guild. They're too loud, too angry. One of them shouts, "Murderer," and brandishes a blade. You end them both in an alley lit by moonlight and desperation. But now the city knows. You're not a shadow anymore. You're a story. A whispered name. A warning passed from mouth to ear. And that's the worst thing you can be in this line of work. Recognizable. Quirky fact: in some parts of medieval Europe, towns employed night watchers with hollow horns. If they saw a suspicious person climbing walls or loitering too long near a noble's home, they'd blow the horn, and people would actually pour out of their houses with clubs and torches. Basically, medieval neighborhood watch with less chill. From that night on, you realize your life is now divided into 2 halves, before you were seen and after. The guild calls you back. Not for punishment, not yet, but for debriefing. You sit in a windowless room while someone behind a screen asks questions you've already answered. Did he see you? No. Did you leave the mark? Yes. Were you followed? No. Silence. Then a strange one. Do you think the mission was authorized? You blink. I was given the order. Another pause. Yes, you were. And just like that, you're dismissed. Later, Enrique finds you sharpening your blade on a leather strap. He leans in, voice low. They're testing you. You ask what he means. They sometimes send out false orders to see if you'll question them. If you don't, and the target wasn't real, well, you just killed someone innocent. That changes a man. Makes him easier to control. You stare at him. Was that envoy innocent? He doesn't answer. Just walks away. You don't sleep that night. You try, but your mind's too loud. Historians still debate whether these psychological games were real tactics or grim myths passed down to paint assassins as tragic antiheroes. But if the guilds were as manipulative as some chronicles suggest, then yes, it's entirely possible your mission was a test. One you passed, one you failed. It doesn't matter, because the next day you get a new order, and you're expected to follow it, no questions asked. You're sent to the mountains this time, cold, thin air that chews at your lungs and whispers secrets through pine needles. The roads are winding, the people suspicious, and your mission is disturbingly vague. Just a name, Brother Lucien, a monk, interfering with holy communications. That's all they tell you. You arrive at a crumbling monastery clinging to a cliffside like it's afraid to fall. Crows circle overhead. Everything smells like old parchment and goat droppings. You pose as a pilgrim seeking penance, which isn't hard. You've got plenty to atone for. Brother Lucien is not what you expect. He's young, thin, friendly in a way that seems genuine. His smile doesn't look carved from habit like most holy men's. He doesn't flinch when you mention the guild's name in code. He just says, "I wondered when you'd come." Not exactly the reaction you were trained for. He offers you tea. You don't drink it. Instead, you follow him. Listen, learn. Turns out, Lucien isn't interfering with anything, unless writing letters about grain shortages and improper tithe collection counts as rebellion now. The man's a glorified accountant with calloused fingers and poor eyesight. The most dangerous thing in his cell is a particularly spiky quill. Still, orders are orders, right? And yet, something stops you. Maybe it's the cold. Maybe it's the way he reads aloud to the orphans at dusk. Maybe it's the fact that he knows exactly who you are and hasn't tried to run, scream, or poison your bread. "Why haven't you reported me dead yet?" he asks one morning while handing you a bowl of thick barley stew. You shrug. Haven't decided what to write. Quirky historical tidbit. Some medieval monasteries actually welcomed ex-criminals as part of their vows of mercy. But not all were forgiving. Certain monastic orders kept private executioners on call for dealing with unrepentant threats. Yes, even monks had hitmen. You sit with this knowledge for days. The wind never stops howling through the mountain passes. One night, you're awoken by shouting, "Bandits. Real ones." A raiding party comes for the monastery's stores. You fight beside Lucien. You even take a sword through the side for your trouble. He stitches you up himself. No questions. And you realize something terrible. You don't want to kill him. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins were allowed personal discretion. Some say the elite had leeway to reinterpret missions when more information came to light. Others argue the penalty for disobedience, especially sparing a target, was death. Or worse, you draft the report anyway. Say he died of illness. Say you buried him in the monastery garden, marked with a small stone. It's not uncommon. People rot quickly in high altitudes. Then you vanish. No trace, no trail. You become mist over the peaks. But your act of mercy doesn't go unnoticed. You return to your assigned region a few weeks later, and suddenly everyone's looking at you differently. The handler squints too long. The mess runner forgets your usual coded phrase. Even Enrique keeps his distance. The message comes in the form of a gift, a silver dagger with your name etched in it. You're not flattered. You're being warned. In some guilds, personalized blades weren't awards. They were marks, indicators that the recipient was now in the spotlight. Any mistake, any delay, and they'd be expected to use that dagger on themselves before someone else did. You start seeing shadows that don't match the sun. Faces you don't recognize lingering at the edges of crowds. One night, your knife goes missing. Just for a moment. You find it again beside your bed, clean, untouched, but definitely moved. You're being watched. And not just by enemies. There's no escaping it now. You've broken protocol, shown mercy. And mercy in your line of work is a liability. It spreads like fire in dry grass. So you double down. Act normal. Take your next assignment without hesitation. A nobleman's cousin who may, or may not, be feeding information to rival estates. You don't even hesitate this time. You kill him in his sleep, burn the records, and vanish into the dawn like a good little shadow. But inside you're splintering. Because now you know the difference. What it feels like to choose. And that choice, it lingers, like smoke in your cloak. Like Brother Lucien's quiet smile. You start asking yourself dangerous questions. What if the next target is another Lucien? What if the one after that wasn't actually guilty? You keep your head down. Keep killing. But something inside you has shifted. And in a guild like yours, that kind of shift doesn't go unnoticed for long. You arrive in the city of Bruges under heavy fog, your boots wet and your cloak weighed down with secrets. The canals glisten like silver veins across the old stone, and everything smells faintly of rotting fish and damp wool. It's beautiful in that decaying sort of way. Fitting really, because decay is your business. The mission sounds routine. A merchant prince accused of shipping forged relics. Bone splinters and shrouds passed off as saints' remains. The church wants it quiet. You're told, make it look like a business rival's grudge. That's how deep you are now. You're not just a blade, you're a narrative. The merchant's name is Otto. Tall, red-faced, owns half the harbor and bribes the other half. He walks with the smugness of someone who's never had to fight for anything. He's also surrounded, again with guards. You're noticing a pattern. Apparently, word of cloaked killers has started to circulate among the elite. Gee, wonder who started that. So you study him. You pretend to be a dock worker. Haul crates until your back threatens mutiny. You overhear dock gossip. Otto's getting soft, don't trust his relics. Good. Doubt is your ally now. That night, you sneak into his estate, easier than you expected. Either his guards are drunk or he thinks money can keep out death. You reach his chamber. You pause, because Otto is crying. Not weeping like a villain in a bad ballad. No, this is quiet, private. He's hunched over a letter, hands trembling. You spot two small urns on the table. One labeled Matilda, the other Gregor, a daughter and a son. Historians still argue whether relic forging merchants were ever targeted for assassination at the behest of religious orders, or if those tales were inflated to make the church seem more ruthless, or more divine. But here's a man who may have lied about bones to afford medicine for dying children. What now? You complete the mission. You do it quickly, silently. No marks, no symbols, just a swift motion and then nothing. But you feel it, something break. And it's not just Otto's spine. Because now you understand something deeper. Your guild doesn't punish sin. It punishes interference, disruption. The moment someone bends power in an inconvenient direction, they become a target. Quirky fact, in 14th century Flanders there were actually laws banning ghost relics, items with no confirmed origin. Merchants caught peddling them could be fined, jailed, or publicly flogged. But some local authorities looked the other way, especially if the fakes brought in pilgrimage coin. The line between heresy and hustle was razor thin. Back in your rented room, you lay out your tools. Blade, vial, rope, wax seal. You clean them meticulously, though the blood's already long gone. You can't explain it. Something about control, ritual, a way to pretend none of this is sliding sideways. Then a knock, 3 soft taps, then 2. The guild signal. You open the door expecting a message runner. Instead, it's Enrique. He looks older than he did 2 months ago. Or maybe that's just the candlelight. Walk with me, he says. You obey. He takes you along the dark canal, the only sound the lapping of water and the faint squeak of rats in the shadows. You half expect him to stab you in the spine mid-sentence. It's that kind of walk. You've been noticed, he says. No kidding. They don't like it when we start thinking too hard, he continues. When we hesitate. You spared that monk. That put a mark on you. You stare ahead. Then why am I still breathing? He shrugs. Because you're useful. For now. But they'll test you again. You ask what kind of test. Maybe a child. Maybe a double. Maybe someone you care about. He doesn't look at you. You won't know until the moment comes. Then he hands you something, a small tin box no bigger than your palm. Inside, a set of wax-sealed vials. You recognize the contents. One is powdered henbane. The other, crushed belladonna mixed with poppy milk. Sleep, paralysis, death, depending on dose. Your next job, Enrique says, might involve choices. You pocket the box. He doesn't say goodbye. Historians still debate whether assassin guilds used poison regularly or preferred clean kills. Some sources describe elaborate venom rituals. Others claim most deaths were brute force in alleyways. Truth? Probably both. Depends on the message. You don't sleep that night. You lie awake listening to water and footsteps and your own breath. You wonder who you're becoming. But dawn still comes. And with it, a new order. This one addressed not to your code name, but your real one. A name you haven't heard spoken in years. The paper just says, return home. Tie up loose ends. Your blood runs cold. Because home isn't just a place. It's a person. You ride through the borderlands with your hood low and your past rattling louder than the coins in your saddlebag. Fields you once ran through as a child roll past in eerie silence. Even the birds here feel like spies. And now you're the assassin returning to your village, not as a ghost but as something far worse. They don't recognize you at first. Why would they? You're taller, harder, less human behind the eyes. The baker's wife gives you bread without blinking. A boy offers to shine your boots for a copper. For a few hours, you let yourself pretend you're just a traveler. But the letter burns in your pocket like guilt, and your next target lives barely a mile from where you once played Knights and Dragons. His name is Calder, and you know him. Your first friend. Your only real one. He taught you to fish. He was there the night your brother died in the flood. He even tried to stop you from leaving all those years ago, but you were stubborn, hungry, desperate for more than chickens and plows. Now, the guild says he's leaking information to rivals in the capital, seditious letters, rumors, truths too sharp for peasant mouths. Historians still argue whether rural uprisings in the 14th century were truly spontaneous or whether there were underground networks feeding information to city factions. Either way, anyone caught in between was crushed flat by both sides. You sit in the local tavern that night, sipping bitter ale and pretending not to watch him laugh across the room. Calder hasn't changed much. Just older, beardier. Still throws his head back when he laughs. Still waves like a fool when he sees you, and yes, he sees you. By the gods, he says, stumbling over. I thought you were dead. You wish you were. He sits without asking. Orders 2 drinks. You want to tell him not to. You want to leave. But instead you smile. The assassin's smile, warm, hollow, sharp at the edges. The two of you talk for hours. He tells you about the harvest, his daughter, the taxes that never stop rising. And the rumors, always the rumors. Lords disappearing. Agents of the crown sniffing around. Not safe for honest folk anymore, he says. Then he leans in. I know who you are now. What you've become. Your hand flinches toward your blade before your brain catches up. I won't tell, he says quietly. I just want to know if you remember who you were. You stare at him. And suddenly you do. You remember the river. The summer you got sick. How he carried you home on his back through 5 miles of storm mud. And you remember his father's funeral, how Calder didn't cry until everyone left and only in front of you. And now you're supposed to slit his throat and call it justice. Quirky detail, there are records of certain medieval towns where executioners refused to kill people they'd known personally, instead faking deaths using pig's blood and runaway horses. Most were eventually caught, but it said a few slipped into legend, ghosts that neither side dared pursue. You wait 3 days. During that time, Calder takes you to the old mill, shows you how he fixed the water wheel. His daughter Milla makes you a crown of daisies. You let her. It's absurd, and warm, and awful. Then the real test comes. A rider arrives in town, guild, masked, mounted, all black. He's not here for pleasantries. You catch him watching Calder's house. You follow him through the forest. When you strike, it's quick. You bury the body beneath roots where no one will look. You burn the mask. You burn the papers. You know what you've done. And now you're out. Historians still debate the existence of phantom assassins, those who severed ties and vanished completely. Some say they changed names, started new lives in far-off lands. Others insist the guilds always found them. Eventually. But for now, you walk back to Calder's and knock softly. He opens the door before your hand even lowers. Thought I'd lost you again, he says. You nod. You can't stay. You leave him with 3 things, a pouch of coin, a blank letter, and your real name. Burn that if you ever need to forget me, you say. Then you walk away. No ceremony. No trail. Just silence. You ride for the coast, unsure what waits. Exile? Death? Or something in between. But you've chosen again. And that choice, it's freedom. Or the start of the end. Salt air stings your eyes as the wind howls across the cliffs of Brittany. Below, waves smash themselves senseless against black rock. You stand alone, hood lowered, watching the sea as if it might part and hand you a new life. It doesn't, of course. Instead, you get another letter. Slipped under your door at a nameless inn by a nameless child. No seal. Just 5 words in cramped, spidery script. You're not finished. One more. You almost laugh. Almost. You're starting to suspect that once you've held the blade, no one ever really lets you put it down. The new target is a noblewoman. Lady Isabel de Valmont. A widow, childless, politically inconvenient to the current duke. Too rich to ignore, too smart to frame. And worst of all, respected. Loved even. You're told she hosts salons for thinkers, astronomers, herbalists. People who ask questions. The kinds of questions that make dukes nervous. And when dukes get nervous, people like you get summoned. Historians still argue whether courtly assassinations were driven more by fear of innovation or simple greed. Some point to letters between nobles urging caution over dangerous ideas. Others think it was jealousy, plain and sharp as a dagger's edge. You approach the manor on foot, disguised as a minor courier. The guards are bored. The steward doesn't blink. The kitchen girl flirts with you while slicing onions, either brave or unaware you're here to unmake history. Inside, everything smells like lavender and parchment. You expect vanity. What you find is philosophy. Books, dozens, hundreds, stacked on shelves and stools and stairways. Volumes on medicine, navigation, translations of Greek works banned in other courts. Lady Isabel herself appears before dinner. She's tall, gray-haired, wrapped in navy velvet, with eyes that could end a duel just by blinking. "You're not from the courier service?" she says immediately. And just like that, the game changes. She doesn't scream, doesn't call the guard. She just walks over to a chair, pours 2 glasses of wine, and waits for you to sit. So you do. "You're here to kill me," she says calmly, like she's discussing rainfall. You nod. "Why?" she asks. Not angry. Curious. You hesitate. "They say your ideas are dangerous." She laughs. "To whom?" You don't answer. Because maybe she's dangerous to the way things have always worked. Maybe she threatens the story powerful people tell themselves before bed, that their world is unshakable, ordained, secure. And maybe you're the lullaby that keeps it that way. She leans forward. "Let me offer you a trade." You raise an eyebrow. Not very assassin-like, but she has that effect. "Stay 1 week," she says. "If you still believe I should die, I won't resist. I've made peace with the end. But I want you to understand what you're ending." And like a fool, or something more dangerous, you agree. What follows is the strangest week of your life. By day, you walk the gardens with physicians who've mapped the pulse. You sit in on arguments about star cycles and herbal medicine and governance that doesn't begin and end with swords. At night, you eat with thinkers. Not just nobles, farmers, poets, even monks. They talk like their thoughts weigh nothing. And no one whispers. Lady Isabel never asks you to stay. She just lets you see. Quirky fact. In some medieval courts, scholars would disguise heretical ideas as dream visions or alchemical metaphors to evade censorship. One infamous example is a coded recipe for immortality that was really a sneaky treatise on democratic rule. On the 6th night, she hands you a book. Not to keep, to read. Inside are notes from her husband, a doctor who died of fever while trying to treat plague victims. He believed knowledge belonged to everyone, not just the wealthy or ordained. The book is stained, weathered, but filled with compassion. And you finally understand. You were never here to silence a traitor. You were here to stop a teacher. On the 7th day, you don't draw your blade. You leave a different kind of message instead, etched into the frost on the glass of your room. She lives. You vanish before sunrise. Historians still debate whether Lady Isabel existed at all. Some claim her name was a pseudonym, used by several underground thinkers. Others suggest she was real but protected by bribes or blackmail. The truth, as always, blurs like ink in rain. Weeks later, you hear whispers in a coastal market. A noblewoman in Valmont was murdered. The body was burned. No witnesses. The book's gone. But deep inside, you know it wasn't her. Because you saw her leave. She's out there now, with a new name, spreading those dangerous thoughts. And if the guild finds out what you did, you're next. So you don't linger. You head north into colder lands where words freeze before they can betray you. And behind you, the legend of the hooded assassin grows louder. But the truth? It's quieter, more dangerous, and far less obedient. You cross into the Holy Roman Empire under a dead man's name. The papers are fake, impressively so. A minor noble who drowned in a boating accident, his identity now repurposed by a silent black market scribe in Ghent. His family will never know, and neither will you. You're just borrowing his skin for a while. New name, new clothes, same blade. You arrive in a town called Weissenheim, tucked between pine-covered hills and misty rivers. The buildings lean like old men huddled for warmth, and the streets reek of chimney smoke and wet straw. You pass under a creaking sign painted with a blue wolf, the inn. Home for now. You're not here for a mission. Not exactly. You're here because word travels and rumor has it someone's been killing assassins. Not royals. Not rebels. Assassins. 3 so far. All guild. All skilled. Found in strange poses, kneeling, arms crossed, mouths sewn shut with waxed thread. Historians still argue whether these killings were the work of a rogue faction, rival guild, or something more symbolic. The waxed thread, in particular, appears in no known execution rituals, leading some to suspect a cult-like origin. Your job? Find out who's behind it. Or more likely, die trying. You pose as a traveling merchant of books and blades, a vague enough profession to explain your scars in silence. The locals are suspicious at first, but you buy enough ale to loosen tongues and give enough fake smiles to pass. And slowly the story unfolds. One of the murdered assassins stayed here, room 4, top of the stairs. You take it. It smells of iron and regret. In the floorboards you find a small vial of oil. Poisonous if ingested. useful if dripped on certain arrowheads. In the chimney ash, a scorched note. He waits beneath the abbey. The abbey sits on the town's edge, wrapped in ivy and half swallowed by fog. Monks drift like ghosts between prayers, murmuring Latin and wiping imaginary dust from stone saints. But at night, it changes. You watch from the woods. Torches flicker underground through grates. Shapes move that don't belong to any monastic order. Someone has taken up residence beneath the holy ground. You wait 3 nights, memorizing patterns. Then you slip in through a drainage tunnel. It smells worse than anything you've ever known. You descend into silence broken only by the soft scrape of your own boots. The torchlight wavers. You draw your blade, slowly, carefully. Then you see them. Robes, black and gold. 6 men, faces covered with pale wood masks. They chant as they work over something, or someone, on a stone slab. You creep closer, heart pounding like a drum. The figure on the slab is alive. Barely. Eyes open but unfocused. Lips sewn shut. Another assassin. Still breathing. Before you can think, your foot clips a pebble. It skitters loudly. The chanting stops. 6 masked heads turn in perfect unison. For the second time in your life, you run like a coward and live like a fool. They chase you through tunnels you don't know, paths that twist like snakes. You dodge a blade. Roll under a gate. Leap over a half-frozen stream and crash into the woods. Behind you, they don't follow. You wait until morning, hidden in a tree, shivering with more than cold. Quirky fact: certain European monasteries in the 13th and 14th centuries are believed to have been fronts for secret societies, some benign, others more esoteric. One rumored order called Die Letzten Wachter, the Last Watchers, allegedly swore to destroy all who weaponize silence. No hard evidence remains, just stories. Back in town, everything looks the same. But you're not. You pack what little you have and vanish again, this time with no fake name, no cover, no comfort. Just a warning whispered into the bark of a tree near the abbey. They hunt their own. Historians still debate whether this period marked a splintering of the assassin guilds or a purge from within. Some speculate the victims were considered too lenient or too free-thinking. Others believe the wax-mouth ritual was a message, that even assassins had rules, and breaking them meant silence forever. You ride west again. Wounded, yes. Hunted, perhaps. But alive. For now. The blade feels heavier at your side. Maybe it always has. Snow crunches under your boots like bones underfoot. You're heading toward Burgundy now, through fields blanketed in frost and fear. The rumors have followed you. Whispers of a masked order, corpses with stitched lips, and assassins too afraid to sleep in the same bed twice. You sleep in haystacks. Abandoned watchtowers. Once, in the rafters of a barn beside a cow who seems suspicious of your presence. And through it all, one truth grows colder than the wind. There is no retirement plan for someone like you. You were trained to kill kings, not raise goats. In Burgundy, you seek a contact. An old friend. Well, friend is generous. A man named Etienne who owes you a favor and only double-crossed you once. He runs a brothel now. Pretends it's a wine house. The sign outside has a grape, but the girls inside wear blades in their garters. Etienne sees you and nearly spills his glass. You're supposed to be dead, he whispers. Getting there, you say. Over salted bread and bad ale, you tell him everything, well, most of it. The guild deaths. The wax thread. The abbey. He listens. Smokes. Then nods. I've heard the same. They call them the quiet ones. Say they're former assassins who turned priest, monk, or mad. Wanted silence to be sacred again. You blink. You're saying they're holy assassins? Etienne shrugs. Depends who's writing the story. He tells you there's a man, codenamed Dercrahi the Crow, who's said to lead this order. Ex-guild. Legend says he botched a job on a cardinal and disappeared into the mountains. Now he's building something. A new creed. One without mercy. Historians still argue whether Dercrahi existed or was simply an amalgam of failed assassins. Some records place him in Vienna, others in Prague. No 2 stories agree on how many fingers he had, but all say his voice was the sound of falling ash. Etienne offers you a room, but you decline. Trust is a currency neither of you can afford to spend. Instead, you follow a new lead, letters left behind by a murdered courier who once worked for the Quiet Ones. Etienne lifts them from a drunk noble's satchel. You copy them in candlelight. They reference a place, a ruin. An old monastery deep in the Vosges forest, burned during a war. Now rumored to be hollowed out, reinforced from within. You don't wait. You leave that night, cutting across the countryside like a ghost with unfinished business. 3 days later, you find the ruins. Thick trees claw at the sky. The air is damp, alive with the smell of pine needles and rot. Stone walls crumble inward. The main chapel leans like it's whispering to the grave. But someone has been here recently. Wood smoke. Fresh prints. A discarded bone-handled knife tucked into the earth like an offering. You wait for darkness. Slip through a gap in the wall. Inside, silence. Not peaceful silence. Stifled. Station. Like something's pretending to sleep. You move deeper. Find stairs. A door. Another. Then voices. Oh, tense. You don't understand the language, but tone is universal. They're arguing. About something important. You reach the edge of a candlelit room half hidden behind tattered tapestries. 12 people kneel in a circle. At the center, a man in a white mask. Not wood. Bone. His robes are stitched with symbols you don't recognize. Circles within circles, eyes without pupils. He speaks softly. The others bow. You pull back just as someone else enters from another corridor, young, breathless, carrying a satchel. You freeze. The satchel bears your old mark. The guilds. Someone has infiltrated them. Or they're working together. You don't stick around to find out which. Quirky fact. There are real medieval records of mercenaries turning to religion in older age, joining monasteries as penance or hiding. Some orders welcomed them for their survival skills. Others feared their influence. One Benedictine chronicle refers to them as wolves in cloisters. You slip out the way you came, but this time, you know better than to return to the roads. You carve a wide path through the forest. Cross rivers backward. Leave false tracks. But still, the next morning you find a feather tied to your saddle. Black. Crooked. A crow's. Message received. Now you're not just hunted by kings. You're hunted by your own. You ditch the horse. Too obvious. Too traceable. You cut your cloak short and smear soot across your cheeks. You burn every scrap of paper with your fake names on it. The crow feather, though, you keep that. Not for courage. Just to remember who's watching. By now, you're beginning to understand, being an assassin in medieval Europe isn't just dangerous. It's a short, downward spiral with no real bottom. The guild offered training, contacts, shelter, but not an escape plan. There is no retirement, no final mission where you get to ride into the sunset. Only more names, more knives, and now, you're someone else's target. Again, you travel under night skies, avoiding cities. The stars above don't judge. They've seen worse. At least they don't stitch your mouth shut. Eventually, you find yourself in Bohemia, land of castles, dense forests, and political schemes as tangled as your own thoughts. You head toward Kutna Ora, a mining town made rich by silver and poor by plague. The locals are too sick, too desperate to care who you are. You buy new clothes. Dull gray. Unremarkable. You find work guarding a coin caravan for a few days. Easy money. No questions. But the silver you carry is cursed in a different way. One night, by firelight, one of the other guards speaks of a place called Herbit of Ticha, the graveyard of silence. A code name, he says, for a remote valley where killers go to disappear. Not retire. Just stop. Some say it's a trap. Others say it's freedom. Historians still argue whether Herbit of Ticha was real or folklore designed to lure rogue agents to their deaths. Its existence appears in only 3 known records, all secondhand and written decades apart. Still you listen, because maybe, just maybe, there's a way out. You break from the caravan after it reaches Prague. No goodbyes. Just one last stolen loaf of bread and a quick exit through the market shadows. You follow the road east for 4 days. Then the road ends and the whispers begin. Villagers in the region speak of ghost men in the hills, of disappearing livestock, of a monk with no tongue who sells herbs but asks for no coin. You nod politely, thank them for their bread, and move on. You find the trailhead at dawn, marked by a pile of stones and a black ribbon tied around a tree branch. Someone wants you to find it, or wants you to believe you have. You climb. The path narrows, weaving between sharp rocks and fir trees that hum with wind. Birds avoid the area. Even insects seem wary. You make jokes to yourself to stay awake. What's the difference between an assassin and a monk? One kills for silence. The other prays for it. See, you're still funny, even if your last 3 friends were found with wax in their throats. By nightfall you reach the summit. And there it is. Not a valley. A plateau. Flat and cold, with an old stone building in the center. Square, windowless, and low to the ground. More bunker than chapel. No doors. Only a single archway. You step inside. It's empty. Completely. No furniture. No tools. No food. No bodies. Just walls covered in old script, etched deeply with crude instruments. Hundreds of names. Some you recognize. Most you don't. Yours is not among them. Yet. And in the center, a small stone dais with a wooden bowl on top. Inside the bowl, a single strip of waxed thread. Quirky fact. In some Slavic traditions, placing a thread inside a bowl at a shrine signified a vow of silence, or the breaking of one. It could also mean the opposite, that silence had been taken from someone. You leave it alone, and you leave the building, because you know what this is now. A test, a warning, maybe even a sanctuary, but not for you. Someone followed you here. Not closely, not sloppily, but you've done this dance long enough to recognize footprints that don't match your own. You sit beneath a tree that night and wait. And sure enough, just before dawn, a shape appears on the ridge. You raise a hand in greeting. The shape raises nothing. It watches, then turns and vanishes back into the woods. Maybe a scout, maybe a guardian, maybe a ghost. You don't stay to find out. Historians still argue whether these remote sanctuaries, if they existed, were designed to shelter former assassins, indoctrinate new ones, or simply serve as symbolic graveyards for identities no longer useful. Whatever the truth, you've seen enough. You descend the mountain slower than you climbed. And as the sun rises behind you, you mutter the only prayer you remember. Let them forget me. No one does. Not yet. You wander now, but not aimlessly. Your feet remember routes long erased from maps, paths once used by messengers, smugglers, monks too quiet for their own good. You keep moving because the moment you stop, you'll hear the silence catch up. You carry no weapons anymore, not because you've renounced them, but because you know better than to be found with any. In your world, a dagger is just a confession waiting to be read aloud at your hanging. So instead you carry coin, and secrets, and a single feather. You make your way into southern France, Provence, with its sleepy hills and sleepy towns and sleepy knights who haven't won a real war in decades. A good place to blend in, a better place to disappear. You find work on a vineyard, pruning vines in the pre-dawn chill, your fingers stained with juice instead of blood. The man who hires you doesn't ask questions. His daughter teaches you how to swear in Occident and gives you fresh bread. She says you have sad eyes. You laugh for the first time in months, but the shadow still follows. You know they've caught your scent again when you find a coin nailed to your door, an old custom among certain noble houses, signaling a blood debt is active. Not many people remember that tradition, but someone does. You leave that night not because you fear death, but because you fear dying here, in a place where you almost started to feel human again. You travel west toward Carcassonne, hiding on pilgrim routes and sleeping in caves once carved by Qatar heretics. The irony isn't lost on you. Heretics and assassins have always shared a certain outlaw kinship. Neither is welcome at the Lord's table. You reach a hilltop village and hear talk of a burned-out fortress in the south, now used by mask-wearers who teach silence. Your ears perk. Again, you follow the lead. By the time you reach the ruin, rain is falling sideways. The wind howls like it's trying to warn you. You ignore it. Inside the fortress, you find signs of recent use, boot prints, soot, even a half-written ledger. Lists of names, many crossed out. One catches your eye, Norcy ceased, your old code name. And next to it, in delicate ink, to be replaced. Replaced. Because no one retires. They just get recycled. Someone's taken your techniques, your style, even your alias. You're not just a fugitive. You're outdated. Historians still argue whether medieval assassin guilds allowed impersonation as a way to protect anonymity, or if these replacements were part of a deeper cult-like ritual, where legacy mattered more than identity. You search the fortress, expecting resistance, but you find something stranger. A training ground, not for killing, for vanishing. You watch from above as a group of 4 initiates, young, quiet, focused, practice slipping in and out of shadows, moving without a sound, speaking only in gestures. They are training to become something cleaner, quieter. You remember your own training. The chaos, the shouting, the bloody knuckles and broken teeth. This is different. They aren't taught to survive. They're taught to be unseen. And suddenly it clicks. This new order isn't about continuing the old ways. It's about perfecting them. Removing the weaknesses, the egos, the grudges, the slip-ups. No vendettas. No personal kills. Just silent, clinical removals. The end of the assassin as you knew them. Quirky fact: one fringe scholar once theorized that an order of mute assassins operated in southern France, using a variation of monastic sign language to coordinate hits. Most mainstream historians consider it fantasy, but no one can explain the 10 identical knives found buried near Montségur. You slip away from the fortress before nightfall, not out of fear, out of recognition. You're not part of this world anymore. You were a blade. They are shadows. And the worst part? They're better. You travel east again, keeping inland, avoiding the coasts and their garrisons. You pass through towns without names and forests without maps. Your boots fall apart. Your coin runs low. You forget what you look like. And still, you survive. Until one morning, in the middle of a forgotten wood, you wake up to find a girl sitting across from your fire. You didn't hear her arrive. She's maybe 12, dressed in rags, watching you with eyes too still for her age. You reach for your belt instinctively, but there's nothing there anymore. She smiles, holds out her hand. In her palm, a crow feather, this one gold-tipped. Then she vanishes into the trees, leaving no tracks. You sit there for a long time, because you finally understand. You're not being hunted anymore. You've been studied. Your name used to mean something. Whispers in taverns, codes and scroll margins. Noircy, the one who struck at dawn with boots wrapped in lambskin. The one who left no echo in marble halls. But now you're folklore at best, misdirection at worst, because they've turned you into a teaching tool. Somewhere in a quiet stone room, someone is diagramming your last mistakes on a wax tablet. Never stay more than 3 nights. Never return to the same disguise. Don't let the bread girl soften you. Your failure's now curriculum. And you're still alive. Barely. You make it into Italy, not the romantic kind with gondolas and blushing poets, but the kind with road bandits, vendetta lists, and merchant princes who buy murders like spices. You sleep in granaries, barter with thieves, and keep your eyes open in churches. Because sometimes the safest place is where no one expects a blade. You meet a man in Siena, covered in tattoos and missing 2 fingers. He calls himself maestro, though he says it like a joke. He teaches anatomy to grave robbers. Claims that if you know the angle of a rib, you know the fastest way to end a breath. You listen. You trade stories. And one night he offers you a deal. Train the next generation, he rasps. And maybe they won't die as loud as we did. You decline. Because you know how this ends. You've seen the pattern. Old assassins don't pass torches. They get replaced. Historians still argue whether medieval killers ever truly formed schools, or if these mentor-student relationships were exaggerated by later writers craving drama. But evidence of shared tools and mirrored techniques across regions suggests at least some network existed. If not officially, then by whispered convention. You leave Siena in a thunderstorm. Lightning slices the sky as if someone up there's trying to redraw your outline. You don't look back. You head south toward Naples, pretending to be a shepherd, a blind minstrel, even a mute. That last one actually works for weeks, until a guard tests your silence by stepping on your foot. You break character. You flee again. By now your body is worn. Your joints complain like bitter monks. Your left knee clicks when it's damp. The glamorous life of a medieval assassin, more ointments than daggers. You find solace in ruins, places abandoned by time and comfort, places that echo too loudly for anyone to sneak up. You settle in an old Roman watchtower and live off dried figs and goat's milk. You even keep a diary for 3 days, just to remind yourself that your thoughts still exist. Then one night you find it, a sealed scroll beneath a loose stone, fresh wax, red twine, no markings. You open it. Inside, a map, not of terrain, of connections, lines between names, symbols, crosses, circles, yours among them. And next to it, 3 words, observed, not erased. So they know you're alive. They let you be. What? Because you're a relic now, a cautionary tale. A ghost used to scare new recruits into compliance. You the once myth, now the don't be like him lesson. You smile, almost laugh, because it means one thing. They're still afraid of you. Quirky fact, in certain Italian towns, bells weren't just rung for weddings and funerals, but for warnings about specific criminals returning. One such bell in Volterra was dubbed Il Suonatore Fantasma, the ghost ringer. Locals claimed it rang even when untouched. You pass through Volterra 2 days later, and the bell rings. Maybe wind, maybe something else. You vanish into the forest again. By now, you know how to live like a shadow. You walk only in the creases between light. You breathe with the trees. You've eaten so many wild mushrooms you've started naming them, Larry, Pinchy, and probably poison. You start leaving signs of yourself behind just to confuse them. A footprint pointed west when you've gone east. A dropped ribbon. A symbol from your old guild drawn in ash on a cave wall. You become a myth on purpose. A whisper not even you recognize anymore. And you realize this is freedom. Not peace. Not safety. But control. You are no longer a blade held by another's hand. You're wind in a locked room. Invisible. Untraceable. They can study you. Copy you. Warn others about you. But they can't be you. Not really. Because they never learned the one rule you live by now. To be forgotten is to survive. The mountains find you next. Not because you're looking for them, but because they're the last place left that hasn't tried to swallow you. You climb into the Apennines, trading warmth for altitude, breath for safety. Up here, the air is sharp enough to cut. The snow hides your tracks but also numbs your fingers. You're no longer hunted, not really, but habits cling harder than fear. There's a monastery carved into the cliffside. No bell, no cross, no welcome. Just monks who speak in nods and carry lanterns made from skulls. You're not sure if they're holy men or hermits who've forgotten how the world works. Either way, they let you sleep in the goat shed and eat in silence beside them. You never tell them your name. They never ask. They teach you how to ferment cabbage, dry meat on slate, and read the sky for weather. One gives you a scrap of parchment with an odd prayer in a dead language. You don't ask what it means. Some nights, you dream of the past, not the kills but the moments in between. The slipper you left on the stair. The cat who hissed before you struck. The clink of coin on stone when a job was finished. And then you dream of the girl. The one who brought bread. The one who saw sadness in you like it was a cloak you'd forgotten to remove. You wake with a start and the sound of distant whistling, a high, tuneless thing riding the wind. You know that sound. The old signal. A blade is near. You leave before the monks notice. Not because you're afraid, but because you know the monks would not survive the kind of attention you bring. Historians still argue whether assassin networks truly used bird calls or whistling codes to signal danger, or if such practices were invented later by storytellers. Still, medieval manuals on warfare sometimes reference coded sounds used by spies. You travel eastward, deeper into the forested valleys where the trees lean too close and the sun never quite lands right. There you see them. A group of 5, dressed as pilgrims, but their feet are too clean. Their blades are too hidden. Their eyes scan too fast. They don't see you, because you are nothing now, less than a shadow. You're the forgotten. You tail them for 3 days. Watch them attempt to kill in a nearby village, messy, loud, full of ego. 1 escapes. 2 die. The last vanishes in smoke. You feel nothing. Not superiority. Not pity. Just distance. Because that was once you. And now you've become something they'll never reach. You move again, this time into the borderlands near what used to be the Papal States. A place where no flag truly waves. Just bribes and borrowed power. In a crumbling fortress town, you find work-carving gravestones. The irony doesn't escape you. You chisel names you've never heard and dates that might as well be lies. The dead don't care what's written, they just want not to be forgotten. One evening, an old woman sits beside you as you work. She says nothing for a long time. Then she hums a lullaby you haven't heard since childhood. You look up, startled. She nods. "My brother sang that before he was taken," she says softly, "by a man dressed in gray." You keep carving, because you were the man in gray. And even now, with your hands caked in marble dust instead of blood, you carry echoes. Quirky fact, in some medieval communities, certain lullabies doubled as coded messages, used to warn of danger, to pass forbidden knowledge, or even to remember victims' names when it was too dangerous to write them down. These songs often vanished with their singers. That night, you hum the lullaby back into the wind. Not for her. For yourself. For the memory that refuses to die. You live quietly in that town for a while. Until someone recognizes your walk. Not your face, not your voice. Your walk. It's the curse of killers. The way you move never fully unlearns its purpose. Too smooth, too cautious, too feline. You wake one morning to a coin on your doorstep. Again. But this time it's split in half. A warning. A message. A goodbye. You take the coin, bury it under a sycamore, and leave once more. No one chases you. No one stops you. Because you've become what they fear most. Not a man. Not a myth. But the space in between. The thing that never dies because it was never truly born. By now, time has folded in on itself. You no longer count years, only winters. Only the shape of the moon when the snow first falls. You've passed through cities reborn under new kings, seen emblems change colors, and watched cathedrals rise where gallows once stood. Your reflection in still water surprises you, more gray than shadow now. A face carved by weather, not war. You don't recognize the nose. The eyes are yours but dimmed. You're in Provence now, far from where it all began. The village is quiet, hemmed in by lavender fields and sun-bleached stone. No one looks twice at the quiet man who trades firewood for eggs, or who mends boots with fingers that used to unlace throats. You build a small house. It creaks in the wind and leaks when it rains, but it's yours. You line the walls with old tools, not as weapons anymore, but as memories. A curved dagger you once smuggled in a hollow book. A poison ring that never left your finger, even when you slept. Now it sits in a dish by the door, collecting dust. You even plant herbs outside. Basil, mint, a small tangle of rosemary. Not for concealment or disguise this time, but because you like the smell. The soil clings to your fingernails more than blood ever did. One day, a child wanders into your garden. Big eyes, sticky fingers, asking if you're a wizard because you wear dark robes and talk to yourself while chopping onions. You almost laugh. Almost. Instead, you teach her how to dry lavender. She returns the next day, and the next. Soon others do too. Not with suspicion, but baskets, loaves of bread, candles. You remind us of our grandfather, one woman says. You nod. You don't correct her. And that's when you feel it. For the first time in decades, the absence of fear. But it doesn't last. Nothing ever does. One morning before the sun rises, you find a mark scratched into your door. A simple circle, crossed once diagonally. You've seen it before. It's not a threat. It's not even a message. It's a question. Are you still one of us? Historians still argue whether aging assassins retired into villages or were simply eliminated by their own networks. Some believe stories of assassins turned hermits are romantic fiction. Others point to records of oddly skilled laborers who settled in border towns, always childless, always quiet. You don't respond to the mark, but you don't remove it either. You wait. A week passes, then two. And then on the 22nd morning, someone knocks. Not the sharp knock of a soldier or the hollow rhythm of a thief. Just 3 soft taps. You open the door. A young woman stands there, cloaked, travel-worn, and unmistakably nervous. She's holding your old dagger. The one with the ivory hilt and the crescent scratch across the spine. I was told it was yours, she says. That you'd know what to do with it. You take the blade. It's cold. Too clean. Too new in the hands of someone who hasn't yet failed. You invite her inside. Not because you want to, but because you remember what it's like to be full of questions and too afraid to ask them. She sits at your table, clutching tea she doesn't drink. They say you walked out of a burning palace, she says. That you poisoned a bishop with a prayer. You shake your head. I heard you faked your death 5 times. You shrug. My master said you were a ghost. You finally speak. Ghosts don't leave door scratches. Quirky fact. In several Mediterranean villages, cryptic symbols carved into doorways were believed to mark specific roles. Midwives, herbalists, or even quiet fixers. Some historians think this practice originated from secret guild codes, others from old pagan traditions absorbed into local lore. You ask her why she came. She stares into her cup. I don't want to become them, she says. The ones who kill without blinking. You lean back. Because this is familiar. Painfully so. You ask her if she knows what happens to people like you. Legends, she says. You nod slowly. No, you reply. Warnings. You tell her stories. Not the glorious ones. The real ones. The time you drowned a mark and it took minutes. The time you spared a man and he came back with an axe. The time you killed the wrong brother. Her hands tremble. She thanks you. And she leaves. She doesn't ask for training. She doesn't ask for your name. She just walks away, slower than she arrived. And somehow, you feel lighter. Not because you passed on the torch, but because you didn't. Because you chose not to. That night, you sit by the hearth, dagger on your lap, herbs drying overhead. Outside, crickets sing in the long grass. You think about the first time you took a life. You think about the girl with the bread. You think about the bell in Volterra. And you think, just maybe, this is the closest you'll ever get to peace. Not because you escaped, but because you endured. It ends as it always does, with silence. No dramatic showdown, no rooftop duel at midnight. Just a quiet morning where the breeze feels different and the birds pause mid-song, as if the world is holding its breath. You wake slowly. Bones ache before your eyes open. That familiar pull in your back, the stiffness in your hands. But something's off. The air is too still. The light through the window feels like it doesn't belong. You sit up. Someone has been here. The cup on your table is shifted slightly. The door creaks more than usual. And your dagger, the one you laid down last night, is gone. In its place, a bundle of herbs and a folded slip of parchment. You open it. The message is short. Thank you. I chose the mountain road. That's it. No signature. No symbol. Just proof. You breathe in deeply, letting the rosemary and ash in the hearth settle into your chest. Because you understand now. The girl didn't come to find you. She came to find a way out of the life you once embraced. And you helped her leave without dragging her into your shadows. Maybe that's the only redemption people like you ever get. Historians still argue whether the so-called last knife of southern France was real or a composite of several fugitives turned folktales. The story always ends the same, with someone unknown offering guidance in the twilight, then vanishing for good. You step outside. The lavender field hums with bees. The air is thick with summer. You sit beneath the sycamore where the half-coin still sleeps beneath the roots. A kind of gravestone. Not for you, but for the part of you that never made it back. A boy walks by chasing a chicken. He waves at you. You wave back. You are no longer a legend. No longer a whisper in alleyways. You're just a man who lived long enough to regret things properly. There's something noble in that. You spend your days as you always do, sharpening old tools no one uses anymore, brewing tea that tastes faintly of regret, writing lists of names you've forgotten just in case they come back to you in a dream. One evening, you walk to the edge of the village. You sit on a flat stone overlooking the river, and you speak aloud. Just once. I made it. No one responds. And that's fine. Some victories are quiet. Some aren't even victories. But you're still here. Still breathing. Still remembering. Quirky fact. In a few medieval burial traditions, stones were placed on the chest or lips of the dead, not to weigh down spirits as often believed, but to silence final confessions. Villagers feared that those last words might undo a soul's fragile balance between salvation and ruin. You decide you'll be buried standing. Feels right. Not out of pride, but because you've spent your whole life on your feet, watching, listening, preparing. Might as well go out the same way. And when your final day arrives, it's not marked by pain or pursuit. Just a long exhale on a warm afternoon, eyes half closed as bees drone softly around your garden. You pass in silence. Not because no one's there to cry, but because there's nothing left to say. They find your tools, your house, your dried herbs labeled in 3 different alphabets. They find the dagger. They find the grave of a coin. And no name, only rumors. A grandfather who wasn't. A gardener who moved like smoke. A man who once told a child to always walk facing the sun. The village marks your home with a simple plaque. Just a symbol, a circle crossed once diagonally. No one knows what it means, but it feels like peace. So now, as the last echoes of footsteps fade and the candlelight in that weathered little house flickers for the final time, you can rest too. Close your eyes and picture the lavender fields. The soft hum of bees floating lazily between the blooms. The distant whisper of the river threading its way through the hills, smooth and eternal. Let the rhythm of that place, the stillness, the hush, settle gently around you. You're far from the alleyways now. No more narrow rooftops. No more bells in the dark. No more coins clinking against stone. What once chased you has faded into story, and what once defined you has grown moss, half forgotten under the roots of a tree. And that's okay. Some legacies are carved in marble. Others vanish like breath on cold glass. You were never meant to be remembered. Just to endure. Just to see the next sunrise. Just to pass along a little wisdom when someone lost knocks on your door. So breathe one last time. Let your thoughts drift through the mountains, across borderlands, through the cracks in old cathedral stones. Float with them until even the weight of memory lifts. You don't have to run anymore. Tonight you sleep not as an assassin, but as someone who made it home. Sweet dreams.